Okay, so we're gonna continue our Elements of Fiction notes. So when we had left off, we had just finished drawing our plot diagram. And now we're gonna go through and discuss what each of those 5 parts of the plot diagram are, and how they're then connected up here with the elements of fiction. So the first one we had was the exposition. So your exposition, think about this as the story. So this is like at the very beginning. We have our characters. So our people, or depending on the story, right, they could be animals, plants. But the idea is that those are the characters in the story. We have our setting. So the places that the story is happening in. And this also includes our conflict. So conflict, when we were talking about summaries the other day, is like the big problem in the story. So conflict is going to be what drives your story along. So in the beginning is when you discover some sort of problem that isn't going to be carried through the rest of the story. So that was exposition. Then we have our rising action. So rising action, you can think about it, see our story's rising. It's getting more and more exciting. It's what keeps us wanting to read. And that's where the beginning events in the story where conflicts happen to keep the reader's interest. So if we just had our one problem and then it was magically solved, the story would be over. Instead, things continue to happen through the story, and it builds up your excitement and keeps you interested because things keep happening so that the character cannot resolve their problem. And that's our rising action. So then we get to the tip top. We call this the climax. In our story, this is a turning point. I'm going to use capital letters for that. Turning point. Things change for the character. Usually we think of this as like the most exciting part, because after this we start heading towards the resolution. So if we thought back to Fetch, we know he had this problem of thinking he killed the professor's dog. And then there's these events that prevent him from solving that problem. The professor wants him to leave. They get in the elevator, he can't concentrate. And then finally we hit this turning point when he just stops the professor and says, "I killed your dog." So after the climax, we move into our falling action. These are the story events that come after the climax. That lead to the end of the story. And the resolution of the conflict. So we got up to that tippy top, and now we're just kind of falling back down to the end of the story. Then our final one was resolution. The resolution is where our plot concludes. Concludes, we mean the story ends. And some questions are answered. We won't always have every question answered. If we think back to Fetch again, we know that the dog's alive. We know that George Dixon gets the job, but we still have some questions about, was he tricking all of the candidates that were trying to get this job? Did they not get it because none of them were honest? We don't really know, right? So we don't have all of our questions answered, but for the most part, our story is wrapped up. It comes to an end.